welcome to another episode of the Raw Gypsy Not Quite Hippie podcast. My name is Trey Byerjan, and today I'll be interviewing the one and only... So welcome everyone to another episode of the Raw Gypsy Not Quite Hippie podcast. I happen to have Miss Rebecca Rosenberg in the house. How in the world are you, young lady?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. Before we get started, I do a little thing called the hot seat. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's where I ask you 4 random questions, and you get to answer them right off the top of your noggin as quickly and as honestly as possible.
Okay.
It's kind of an icebreaker. So.
All right.
Question number 1. What would be 2 things that you would do, not 1, but 2 things that you would do if you woke up tomorrow and found out that you were invisible?
Invisible? Ooh. I would sneak into colleges and get my degree for free. That's 1. And 2, I would probably climb aboard some kind of a space shuttle and go visit outer space or something.
That's perfect. That is too funny. Everybody would think about what's the 1 thing they would do, but what's 2 things you would do? That's why I thought that was an interesting question. Yeah. Okay. Number 2, name 1 teacher, K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade, that you remember or inspired you the most, and why?
Ooh. I would say Mrs. Wynn. Mrs. Wynn was my geometry math teacher in, I think I was sophomore year of high school. And she made me feel so smart and capable in mathematics. And I loved her approach. I loved how she really engaged the students and made it super fun.
Isn't that so funny that we have that 1 teacher? Everybody seems to have that 1 teacher that we all remember. And I have one as well. And I just wonder if they remember those students as fondly as we remember them. I know they have so many, but so many that so many teachers that touch our hearts. And I find it fascinating that we can all at least remember 1 or 2.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Teachers are essential.
Absolutely.
Especially good teachers.
Yes. So number 3, what is the 1 thing that people misunderstand the most about you?
Ooh, so this is pretty easy for me. Apparently, I fake it really well. I fake being okay really well. When I'm in pain, or when I'm fighting through my symptoms, or if I'm fighting through disability or any of those things, I apparently make it look really easy and even fun. And so people often don't realize how hard I have to fight almost every single day of my life just to appear normal.
Right. You do come across as very, even when you could tell that you're struggling in some of your videos, you come across very upbeat.
Thank you.
It's infectious. It's infectious. Number 4 is a would you rather question. Would you rather have the same song stuck in your brain forever, or an itch that you just can't scratch?
No itch. Ew, no. I would rather have the song stuck in my head forever, and if it's a Broadway tune, even better. I have like nerve issues with itches already, and so like a mosquito bite can just get me in tears sometimes. I'm okay with more pain. I'm totally good with that, but the in-between pain, no, absolutely not. Get it away from me. I'd rather it hurt bad.
Rather it hurt bad.
Make up your mind. Either leave me alone or hurt, but don't tease me.
I hear you. And it's funny, the songs that do get stuck in your brain for no reason. You wake up and there they are, and you're thinking, where in the world did that come from?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's it. That's the hot seat. And like I said, it's just an icebreaker to just kind of get you warmed up a little bit. It has nothing really to do with what we're going to talk about today. It just kind of loosens you up a little bit. And so.
I like it. That was cute.
Yeah. All right. Well, today you happen to be where? Where are you located today?
I'm in Gerald, Texas.
Gerald, all right. For those who don't know, where is that located?
It's about an hour north of Austin. I'd say that's the biggest landmark.
And spell it if you don't mind.
Jarrell.
Gerald. Gerald, Texas.
Looks like Jarrell, but we have to say it with a Texan accent.
There you
Gerald.
go. There you go. There you go. Well, what's the weather like there in Gerald today?
It's actually really nice. Usually in July, August, and September, it's excruciatingly hot, and especially in the center of Texas. But today it is actually, we've got a breeze. It's kind of overcast. It's feeling kind of like 95 instead of 120.
Nice. Very nice. I just left Austin, Friday, and it wasn't unbearable. It wasn't.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, good. Awesome. Well, your story, Rebecca, it's an impressive one. It's extremely impressive. Oh, and before we even get started, I have to tell you this. Okay. Side note, when I first started this vegan journey, or the raw vegan journey, part of my journey, I was looking online, looking on YouTube for raw food inspirational people, and I typed in raw food, and for some reason or another, I don't know if it was because I was in Cypress, Texas at the time, but your YouTube channel popped up, Texas Fruitarian.
Oh, neat.
And I thought, wait a minute, a fruitarian in Texas? What is that about? So I clicked on you. Okay. First time I ever saw you. I clicked on you, and in rolls this beautiful intro of this fruit just rolling down, and Texas Fruitarian with this beautiful font. I was blown. I thought, oh my God, I was blown away. I said, oh my gosh, this lady has got it going on. I've got to watch this.
It's the fruit avalanche.
I was in awe, and I'm in awe of it every time I click on every time you come out with a new video, I got to click on it, and and I got to see your intro.
Oh, well, thank you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm completely jealous because I tried to figure out how in the world you did it, and I didn't do that.
Well, my secret weapon is my partner's brother did it for me.
Hey, it's who you know, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. But yeah, getting back to your story, it's an incredible story. So before we get too deep into what your afflictions were growing up, and what you've and how you've battled them, can you start from the beginning? Your childhood, where was it like? Where'd you grow up?
Sure. Well, I grew up, I'd say I spent the majority of my childhood on a farm in Dobbin, Texas, which is north of Houston, like way north, further than the Woodlands, and like in Montgomery County.
Okay.
Yeah, it's way up there. And if you know the Texas Renaissance Festival, it's not very far away from that.
Okay. I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, so I spent the majority of the time that I remember as a child on that farm. It was just a tiny little farm. We had a lot of animals, and I loved being around the animals. The animals were my best friends. And I, from a very early age, had conflicting emotions about eating animals, because often on the farm, you end up preparing your own. And I was just not okay with that. And I can remember a few times when I threw a tantrum at the dinner table and went to bed hungry because I was like, I don't want to eat my friends.
Right.
I didn't feel like that was an unreasonable thing.
No, it is not.
But at the time, my mother was a registered nurse, and she had me convinced from a very early age, and I'm sure it was her training, but that we needed animal protein in order to thrive, to be healthy. And I believed it. And then looking back, I could be angry at her, or I'm angry at the people who taught her or misled her. But I feel like that was the beginning of my health problems, exacerbating my health problems. I, from a very early age, had a lot of anxiety and depression, panic attacks, insomnia, night terrors, due to my parents' relationship falling apart very early on. And then I kind of got dragged through the middle of that, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And so I ended up having a lot of emotional problems. I didn't do very well in school, even though my test scores were pretty decent. Understandably, a kid who's troubled might not do so well.
Right.
But I had these problems and these symptoms manifesting very early on. I feel like a large part, a contributing factor to the exacerbations and the rapid speed at which my problems developed early on had a lot to do with my protein intake, my animal, the meat, the dairy, the cheese, all of which I thought protein, calcium, iron, all the things that you need.
Right, right.
So, but it ended up being that by the 6th grade, though, I would say even by the 5th grade, but I was battling hypoglycemia chronically.
Now,
Which,
you were battling hypoglycemia, the low blood sugar, correct?
low blood sugar. What would happen was my blood sugar would be spiking and crashing really hard. But I was never really a sweets person. I've always been a very savory, salty person. So I would be mega loading on the animal products, which are high in fat. And I believe that this is what triggered all of that to happen and spiral out of control. And then every other day, I was dealing with the blood sugar spike and the crash, sometimes several times a day. I would have to bring glucose packets in my backpack to school with me in order to bring myself back up.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
This is 5th and 6th grade, is that right?
Yeah, by 6th grade, the doctors were, the pediatricians were saying, I'm basically pre-diabetic and I will eventually be full-blown diabetic type 2. And I would eventually be taking medications for the rest of my life to manage my blood sugar levels.
Holy smokes. 5th and 6th grades, pre-diabetic, type 2, not type 1, which is a little more understandable. I mean, we come across kids who are type 1, who are that young,
Right.
But to be type 2 at that age.
The lifestyle one.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and to me, I was told that I should have a lot of healthy proteins and fats in order to combat this. So I was like mega dosing on meat and dairy products, even though it made me like sick, physically and emotionally. It just made me sick. Like I didn't want to do this. And the more I did it, and I was told the more that I did it, the better I would be, the more healthy that I could maybe reverse my course. I don't know. But I was under the impression that to do good and to be healthy, I had to load up on all these things that were actually causing my diseases.
Right. At
So,
the 6th grade. So then move forward. Your hyperthyroidism. I know you've talked about that, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and you've also had hypertension and high cholesterol and things like that. When did those start rearing their ugly head?
Yeah, so my very early 20s, I ended up feeling like a zombie, and my mother had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroidism.
Oh, wow.
And so her endocrinologist, she talked to him about me, and they were like, yeah, she needs to come in. She has the same symptoms. She probably has it. There is a genetic component there. Sure enough, I had Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. I was diagnosed and medicated in my very early 20s. But I actually went vegetarian at 19 years old, just to backtrack just a little bit. And it didn't do anything to prevent my diagnosis of Hashimoto's hypothyroidism.
Sure.
And actually, when I did go vegetarian, I was still convinced that I needed meat in order to live. But by that time, I was so very sad and dealing with suicidal thoughts that I actually believed that I might die if I stopped eating meat. And so when I did stop eating meat, it was kind of a surprise that I didn't die.
Wow.
And then
that's not unlike a lot of folks who believe those kinds of things too. I mean, if it's pounded into your psyche that this is what you have to have, it's traumatizing to do it, but at the same time, it seems like it's almost fearful to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I like to just mention that I was vegetarian by the time I got diagnosed.
Sure.
With that. And then at 25 is when I actually read the book Skinny Bitch, and I had no idea about the dairy industry because my perspective of farms was this one little tiny farm. I had no idea about factory farming. And so reading Skinny Bitch opened my eyes to the dairy industry, and I went vegan overnight as soon as I found out about that. But it didn't really do anything for my hypothyroidism. Didn't alter my medications at all. My levels were still very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I was developing hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood pressure in my 20s as well. And again, I was told, increase your protein.
Sure. So you went vegetarian. You were diagnosed with hypothyroidism at 22, 21?
I think I was about 22. I cannot remember the exact date. I remember when I went vegetarian at 19.
Mm-hmm.
It was 22. I can't remember the exact month or day. Might have even been 23, but I really doubt it because of the timeline of when I got married at 23 as well. Right. So it was before then.
So 3 to 4 years of eating vegetarian, you were diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, and then you found the Skinny Bitch, and then you to go dairy free.
Yeah, vegan for the animals.
Vegan for the animals. And so how long, and you didn't notice any change in your thyroid at that time either, right?
No, right, and not just my thyroid, but my overall health. Like nothing was really improving. In fact, if anything, I was getting worse. Oh. And that made me feel really frustrated because people say, oh, go vegan, mm-hmm. and all your health problems will go away. And for me, but I was also continued to have these ideas that I needed to increase my protein and increase my healthy fats in order to, for good brain health, for my endocrine system, sure. All of these things that I was told by doctors and my mother, who was a registered nurse.
Sure.
And I followed them because I wanted to do the best and things for my body, and I wanted to do good.
Sure,
I didn't want to be naughty. I wasn't trying to hurt myself. I just didn't know any better.
So back up. So so what kind of vegan? You said you were vegan for ethical reasons. What was the diet like? Your vegan diet like?
Well, back in the day, I couldn't find anything except for soy milk in the grocery stores.
Sure.
So it was a whole lot of fruits, vegetables. I wouldn't even say a whole lot of those, but a lot of bread, pasta, canned foods, frozen foods. But I was still doing a lot of fat with oil, especially. One of my endocrinologists had told me, if you can try and consume a quarter cup of olive oil every single day, extra virgin organic olive oil, then that would be great. And so I was trying to do that because the doctor told me to do it.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I wasn't doing myself any favors by following the dietary advice that I was being given at that time.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like you were necessarily the quote unquote junk food vegan either, though.
Well, I evolved into that. As the vegan products came out, mm-hmm. I felt that it was my personal duty to buy all of them whenever I saw them, because I needed to make sure that they stayed in business and offered vegan options for the rest of the other new vegans out there.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, and so I was like, vote with your dollar. Absolutely support these vegan companies. So not that I would afford to buy all of them, but as many as I could.
Sure.
But the junk foods didn't do so well with me, and my stress at work increased. My marriage was on the rocks. I ended up going on antidepressants, a couple of them actually, towards my later 20s, because I thought that this was going to fix my marriage. Mm-hmm. And spoiler alert, it didn't.
Wow.
You can't just medicate away your problems.
No.
But then by then I was on a benzo and an antidepressant, and then I had to go through the withdrawal period for the benzo, and that was brutal. Oh. Had I known about the benzo withdrawal thing, I would never have started taking it in the first place. But they don't disclose that to you before you start taking those things. But It took me like 6 months to get rid of that out of my system and to feel stable. I was, I was so dizzy. I had vertigo. I had brain fog. It was awful. Right. And I highly caution against using benzos for any reason.
Wow. So what kind of other than the hypothyroidism medicine, what other medications were you on?
Well, at a certain point, I was medicated for high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and I was on some kind of a beta blocker.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the names, honestly. My brain was legit foggy at that time.
Yes, I imagine.
I was on acid reflux medication because by then, by my mid-20s, I had started abusing alcohol and caffeine. I mean, I was doing like 32 to 48 ounces of coffee, like straight up coffee, not frou-frou, sugary coffee, but actual coffee every morning. And like following that in the evening with like a bottle or two of wine.
Yes.
Just to force myself into sleep and wake modes.
Sure.
And that went back to, you know, ever since early childhood, having chronic sleeping issues, nightmares, and insomnia, things like that. So I was self-medicating with uppers and downers.
Holy smokes. So you were taking uppers to get up and downers to get back to sleep again. And I'm sure it was a struggle because you said you had insomnia issues.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a struggle to get to sleep, but then it was probably a struggle to get up and motivated. So you had to, you know, medicate yourself with the caffeine to get up and moving. So tell me, you know, my son has had night terrors before. I think I've had one. Describe a night terror for those, because they're scary.
Well, it's like the dream world and the wake world kind of overlap at the end of a particularly scary dream. And you can wake up and even move around and see things that you saw in your dreams in the waking area. And as they fade away, you're like, oh, that's not real. I'm awake and I'm okay. But
Right.
For a few minutes, maybe I would say it feels like forever, but I would say maybe 10 to 15 seconds, maybe even 20 seconds, you're very disoriented and confused. And in my case, because of the divorce drama with my parents
Sure.
from a very early age, whether intentionally or not intentionally, I had the idea that my father was coming to kill me. So my reoccurring night terror was of my father coming and killing me. And I would actually be killed and die in my dreams.
Oh my God.
And I would usually wake up in the middle of being killed. And then like it would just kind of settle and it would fade away at that moment. But in that moment, it's terrifying because you cannot tell reality from the dream.
And could you move? Because some people have the night terrors, they can't
The
move.
cataplexy, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would have cataplexy, sometimes I would not.
That's
Sometimes I would, and usually with the cataplexy, I would be frozen and know that I'm dreaming. I would have that awareness, like I'm dreaming. I'm trying to wake myself up and I just can't move. I can't open my eyes. I can't move my limbs. Like everything is just like, I'm aware of where I am and I just can't move. I'm like frozen in my body. That's terrifying too. Fortunately, nobody killed me during those times. It was just feeling trapped in your own body type thing.
no, you made it. You made it.
Terrifying.
Oh yes, it is. I've had one, and it felt like an oppression or just a weight pushing down, and I felt like I kept sinking slowly and slowly and slowly into the bed, and I finally just said, "Hey, look, get the F off of me, whatever this is." And I woke up and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that was weird." Scared
Yeah,
the
you
piss out of me.
get almost trapped in your own dream world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I wanted you to touch on that. You talked about that earlier, and I you know, we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but that's so scary. And I know that we are going to lead up to the causes of this, which I find absolutely fascinating. But we'll kind of backtrack just a little bit. So here you are. You're vegan for the animals. Everybody's telling you, hey man, you know, you go vegan and it'll solve all your problems. Or it should solve all your problems. But then you have one end of the medical community telling you, well, you know, you need to eat more protein, and here, you know, you need to eat more animal fats, and you got to have your protein and your calcium and your iron. But yet you're still sick. You're getting it from both ends, but you're still sick.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. And everybody's an expert. Everybody is an expert, and you are feeling like, and I'll speak from my own experience. I felt so confused already because of brain fog, because of lack of energy. I was chronically fatigued. I felt like a zombie most of the time, just living in this in-between space.
from like a sleep, probably. Most
Yeah.
of you, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Apparently I've been sleep deprived my entire life.
Yes.
And often living in the in-between. I'm not quite asleep. I'm not quite awake. It's just this fog. So when you're like that, and when you are sick and when you don't feel well, you can be led down all kinds of different paths. Everybody's an expert. And it's really hard to discern who to trust, who's credible, what is actually going to help me. And all this time, I actually became very disillusioned with the medical community by my 30s, because I was so tired of doing everything right and never getting better. Like, you guys made these promises that I would feel better if I just did these things. It's not working. In fact, I feel worse. And every year it seemed like I was adding something to my list of things that was wrong with me. Sure. And then because of the coffee and the alcohol, I was dealing with the acid reflux.
Oh, yes.
And so if I didn't take the Prilosec treatment for 14 days every 6 months, I would feel like I was having a heart attack because of the acid reflux happening.
Oh, yes. It will. It'll do it. I've talked to people who tell me, I have GERD. Well, hold on. Let me go make another cup of coffee. And this is late at night. And I'm thinking, dude, you can't drink, 10 pots of coffee a day and not expect to get some sort of acid reflux. So you don't have
coffee,
GERD.
Coffee, any kind of caffeine for me, even too much tea, but fatty foods.
Sure.
And the crazy thing is, nowadays I can eat as many acid fruits as I want, and I will never get heartburn.
Isn't that insane? Absolutely insane.
And spicy food. And spicy. I can eat straight up raw jalapenos, raw habaneros, and I will not get heartburn.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. So you've got your disorders with the hypothyroidism, hypertension, high cholesterol, even the diabetes. I'm assuming it's still lagging around. And so what was the next step? What did you notice that kind of pushed you over the edge to this next debilitating disease?
Well, this was I'd say, culmination of everything was when I was 30 years old. Mm-hmm. And I had been suffering all these years. Everything's just getting worse. And then I end up, and by the way, my weight was out of control. I was morbidly obese. Mm-hmm. Nothing I did, whether I ate too little or too much, didn't matter. I was just gaining weight. So that was also very frustrating, to be on diets and I would continue to gain weight.
Sure.
But then the big thing that happened to me was that on September 8th of 2014, mm-hmm. I ended up in the hospital with the outfunction over the left side of my body. And at first, they thought that I had a stroke because 30 years old, I was way overweight, but I was also in denial. And so I would snap back at them and say, I'm vegan, I'm 30 years old, there's no way I had a stroke. Vegans don't get strokes. That was another myth that I clung to, but apparently vegans can get strokes.
Sure.
But stroke was actually ruled out in my case after an MRI, a spinal tap, EKG. I had a bunch of other tests and so much blood work.
Right.
But eventually it was concluded that I had definitive multiple sclerosis.
Holy smokes.
And I got a second and a third opinion, and I was like, there's no way. I have this incurable autoimmune disease on top of the Hashimoto's, which is also incurable autoimmune disease.
Right.
And this one is so unpredictable. You don't know how it's going to affect you. Every single person is totally different with how it manifests, the frequency, the progression. They say that it's totally random, but I may have my own opinions about that now. I feel like we can greatly influence our progression at this point in my life. But at the time, I felt hopeless and I felt betrayed. And I felt like I've been doing all the right things. Why me? Why am I getting more and more diseases? And now I can't use my left side. Will I ever be able to use it again? It was very frustrating and terrifying.
Scary, very scary. Oh my gosh. So that was September the 8th, and that was 2014.
14.
14. Oh,
It's
wow.
been almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Golly. So you, so you were there in the hospital, and you don't know what's going on. Did they tell you right then, as you were visiting the hospital, that you were diagnosed with this?
Well, it was actually really funny. While I was in the hospital, I was in there for 4 days. And every time the shift changed, there was a regular doctor on the floor, and then there were the neurologists, the specialists. And depending on which doctor came through the door was a different diagnosis. And they kept flip-flopping on me for all 4 days. Because the regular doctor would come in and say, yeah, it's a stroke. It's definitely a stroke. It's not MS. Don't listen to those neurologists. Then 5 hours later, a neurologist would come in and be like, no, this is definitively multiple sclerosis. You didn't have a stroke. That's not what a stroke looks like. And then another doctor would come in and be like, no, it was a stroke. We're fixing your chart. It's fine. And this flopping back and forth for 4 days. And so after I left the hospital, that's when I got a second and a third opinion,
right,
just to make sure. And the neurologist that I did actually listen to in the hospital and believed ended up being absolutely 100% correct about it.
Sure. And so for those that don't know, multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disorder, like you said, that attacks the myelin sheathing around your nervous system, correct?
Yes, around the neurons in the brain.
Yes.
We all have little neurons. They're little neurotransmitters for information and data.
Mm-hmm.
And the immune system for multiple sclerosis, it'll attack the myelin sheath, which is the protective, I want to say, fatty coating around the neurons.
Right.
And it interrupts the connection between the neurons. So the signal coming from the brain to different parts of the body may be interrupted. And so in my case, for this particular instance, the signal to the left side of my body got cremated for whatever reason.
Holy smokes. So it was, paralysis or just weakness? Explain that, the symptoms that you were experiencing.
I would look at my leg and look at my arm on the left side, and they wouldn't move.
Oh my gosh.
And it was very scary. And I would lift it, like I would lift my arm with my right arm.
Right.
And I would look at it and I would say, just like, hold steady. I did this little game, actually trying to drive that very morning. I tried to put both hands on the steering wheel, and that's when I was like, okay. Because for whatever reason, I was in denial.
Sure.
All morning, and I dragged myself, and I thought my left side was asleep. I thought maybe I just sat on it wrong.
Right.
Going through the motions, and I was so fatigued and tired that I didn't notice just how bad it was. And I was just in total like, oh, it's fine. It'll be fine by the time I get to work. And so with my right side of my body, I got myself into the car. And cause like I could prop myself up with my left leg, but I couldn't bend it or move it forward.
Sure.
And then like my arm wouldn't move up. And so I would try and grab the steering wheel, and I put my left hand up on the steering wheel, and I would just watch it fall into my lap.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, that's so weird. Fortunately, I'm right-handed, so.
Yes. So what about your face? Nothing on the face, just
over the neck. It was only shoulder and down.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other thing where they were like, we don't think it was a stroke. Your face is fine.
True.
So that was interesting. We were looking for facial droopiness, although my speech was a little bit slurred. And I had a little bit trouble swallowing. Sometimes I still will,
mm-hmm.
Just on occasion, but I can't be sure that that's old damage or new damage, because when we got the MRI done, apparently I had 4 other attacks, separate ones, and I just hadn't noticed it before because I was so accustomed to suffering.
Sure.
It was normal for me.
Sure.
So it was hard for me because I was always just, close your eyes and just push through and move forward and just keep moving, get to the desk, got to make money, got to do my thing, got to keep my animals fed. And I would ignore a lot of signals from my body, suffering and everything, until I absolutely couldn't ignore it anymore.
Holy cow. So you're other than the paralysis of the left arm and the left leg, I mean, I know that that there are other issues, tingling and maybe even tremors. Did you notice any of that as well, or is it just the paralysis?
For me, the big one was the paralysis. I did notice some very, very mild tremors, and they was just very infrequent, but it was never to the point where it was what I would call debilitating. I could work through it and ignore it. The worst part about the brain stuff, though, was it affected my memory center and my logic center. So my ability to make memories was really inhibited, and my ability to work out logic was also very much hindered. If I had a conversation with you during that first week, especially, I would have to write down everything that you said of importance in order to keep it in my head long enough for me to be able to comprehend what you were saying and respond to you.
Oh, wow. Wow. So now these were attacks or flare-ups? Is that what you would call it? I mean, were they come and go, or did they stay pretty much steady the whole time?
Well, I don't really know. According to the MRI, they were all older than 6 months. They can't really pinpoint an exact time when they happened. It's just, this is newer than 6 months. This is older than 6 months. Okay. The one that put me in the hospital with the left side of my body was current and active at that time.
Right.
The older stuff, we don't know when, we don't know what it was affected. We have no idea. There's no answers there.
They just knew that it had happened.
Yeah, that I had some episodes, and I guess we call them episodes or exacerbations or I don't know, attacks. Some people call them an attack, but an actual formal event is designated on the MRI as like a mark, a scar on the brain.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
That's what they call it, a lesion.
A lesion, yes.
Yeah, so you count the lesions and you're like, that's how many incidents you've had.
Okay, so you've had this one incident that put you in the hospital. So now what? You've been diagnosed. Third diagnosis, I guess, for lack of a better word. So what happens now? How did you move forward after that?
Well, they gave me a prescription for a handicap sticker. Mm-hmm. I did not fill it. I do not have a handicap tag on my car. They gave me a prescription for physical therapy, and I also crumpled that up and put it on the floor. I went to the gym. I got a personal trainer, and I relearned how to walk in the gym parking lot. I had my partner on one side and my trainer on the other, and between the two of them, I was relearning how to walk around the gym. And then that eventually ended up being learning to run again.
Oh, wow.
And I was lifting weights, doing weight training to help reconnect my brain to my body.
Sure.
And I did a lot of visualizing, like looking at my limb and saying, okay, I'm going to visualize the connection between my brain and my limb, and I'm going to forge a new one.
Right.
I'm going to reach it. And so I feel like part of that willpower and part of that focus helped me either heal a connection or maybe connect a new neural pathway around the damage. I cannot be sure exactly what the result was or how that worked out, but all I can tell you is that I got my function back.
Okay. Now, this is before you went raw, is that correct? Or had you changed?
Oh, no. Okay, so in the hospital, mm-hmm. I was very mad for about being a vegan and being sick. Sure. And so I had always known about these raw people, this raw and fruitarians, and I just thought they were crazy. I thought they were like extremists. I didn't think they really I thought they were illogical and into pseudoscience and all of that.
Sure.
So, but I mean, I was so desperate in the hospital that I was like, you know what? At this point, I feel like my life is over. I feel I may or may not recover. I have no idea. It might be progressive. I have no idea. But if I'm going down, I'm going to do every single thing that I can in my power and control in order to do my part to stop this, so that if I do go down, I can say I tried. I tried everything, and I would be okay passing on knowing that.
Sure.
You know, I think they say you don't die from MS, but you do die if your organs fail because they can't connect to your brain.
Sure, that's very true. That's very
So,
true.
it might be heart failure or your brain just disconnected.
Wow.
I mean, that can happen.
Yes, that's true. That is very true. So you're in the hospital and you did you decide to go raw right then in the hospital, or did you, after you finally had your final or your last diagnosis, is that when you decided to go raw or what?
I thought very, very hard and seriously about it in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So that was September 8th when I went into the hospital. 4 days later, I got out. And then for the next couple of weeks, I played with raw. I played with going raw for a few days, and then I'd go back onto vegan junk food. And I noticed that whenever I added processed foods, processed vegan junk foods, such as like the fake vegan or the fake meat sausages, the seitan, tofu, all the proteins, I didn't feel as well. And especially if I had salt or the more dense foods. But if I stuck with a lighter meal, like fruits or vegetables, I felt better.
Right.
So on October 12th of 2014, just over a month later, after that first day in the hospital, a nurse had come to my house because she was going to teach me how to inject myself with the MS drugs. Because at that time, I was still trying everything, every single thing that they threw at me. I was like, let's do it. Apparently, there are these drugs. I was on Copaxone, and you basically give yourself a shot, an injection. Mine was every other day, and that is come to find out later that's supposed to, in theory, reduce your relapse rates by maybe a third if you're lucky, compared to the control.
Wow.
And when I got my auto-eject gun, I didn't know this at the time, but my auto-eject gun was faulty. You basically press a button and it shoots the needle into you. And so it was shooting the needle into my muscles instead of the adipose tissue where it should have been injected.
Right.
So I was experiencing, whenever I did my Copaxone injection every other day, I was experiencing like excruciating pain from these MS injections.
Right.
And that particular day that nurse could come over, that was the day when, that is my day one.
Day one.
Yeah, because I decided if I am willing to inject myself with these MS drugs, then I better be willing to step up and do my part and do everything in my power to be able to help myself, because this is awful and I don't want to do this and not do my part.
Yeah, you were going to be doing this for the rest of your life. You might as well, if you're going to be extreme, let's go extreme.
Yeah.
Right?
Might as well throw everything at the wall and just see what sticks.
Let's try this crazy raw stuff out, see what happens.
Yeah. So it didn't seem as irrational to me at the time when I'm sitting here injecting these painful medications into my body. I mean, that's and I would experience like shooting lightning pain through whatever limb it was. You're supposed to rotate the injection site. And so if it was like in my arm, it would shoot down my arm. If it was in my leg, it would shoot down my leg. And it was like excruciating for maybe an hour or two after the injections. And I mean, I would just be bawling and just begging the universe, please, can I have a day without pain, please? What did I do to deserve this? I'm eating vegan. I should have some good karma.
Well, thankfully I believe in design. I think we're designed the food that we eat is, we are perfectly designed to eat the way that you eat, of course, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, it's so funny that you thought, like you said, you thought you were doing well. You thought you were eating right. Good karma, anything, whatever it is, something should have given you some relief and it just wouldn't. So day one comes along. What did you eat day one? What was day one like for you as a raw vegan?
I ate a watermelon.
You ate a whole watermelon.
Yeah. And I know that because I posted about it on my Facebook, because I've never really had a sweet tooth. And my post was, well, today is the first day I'm off, and I'm devouring a whole watermelon, and this whole raw vegan thing would be much easier if I actually had a sweet tooth. because
Sure.
I don't.
Sure.
So I was really forcing that down. And I think at the time it was a personal size watermelon, not a jumbo like it would be nowadays.
Sure. But you didn't like watermelon that much
It
before?
was okay. I liked fruit okay, but I didn't want to make a meal of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I wanted something salty and savory and heavy.
Of course. That's
With
exactly
those
right.
healthy fats.
Those healthy fats.
Like 2 avocados and stuff like that. Like,
it's so funny. I follow Dr. Brooke Goldner. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Brooke, but
yeah.
she she had lupus and at the age of 16, and she healed herself through a mostly raw vegan diet, and that's a protocol that she went through that really helped her out. But she say that because she says that it's so funny. You said earlier that you looked at your hand and you said, I'm going to grow, or I'm going to reach my hand. I'm going to grow new connectivity to my hand. And she says that your body, the way it's designed, that you should be able to tell your body what to do, and it should react. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you mentioned all the foods that you were eating and how they kind of made you feel bad. But she goes through a list of the fats and the unhealthy fats and the omega-6s and things like that, and all these things that are inflammatory. And what is an autoimmune disease? What is just
driven?
Almost any disease really is inflammation driven.
Inflammation driven,
and it's crazy.
Yeah, and actually nowadays I don't eat overt fats. Like I don't even eat the ones that I jokingly put in quotations, the healthy fats.
Sure.
Like all of that for me and for my symptoms tend to be inflammatory, and so I noticed, and I had to learn this very early on, because when I first started with raw, I had no idea. I was like, oh yeah, a cup of cashews, like 2 avocados, just mix it with some tahini and just a sprinkle of salt or whatever to make it taste good, because I didn't know how to make food taste good. Right. I was like, how are you supposed to eat all these raw fruits and vegetables and not make them taste good? I don't understand. And so the fat for me was very comforting and satiating, but I noticed, and I just happened to observe that my body didn't feel as good whenever I had any sort of fats like that. Right. And my symptoms would get worse and my brain fog would come back. And so nowadays I thrive without any of those fats at all.
Right. So you, day one, October, what day was it again?
October 12th of 2014 was my raw vegan day one.
2014. So you move forward, you start eating raw. And did you play around with the more savory, fatty raw stuff before you moved into the fruits, or did you jump right into fruits?
No, I definitely played with the fat stuff because I would watch other raw vegans posting on Instagram and Facebook, and the gurus, the recipe books. I wanted some guidance because I didn't know what I was doing. I just had this idea that if I just ate raw, maybe it would cure me, or maybe it would relieve some of these symptoms or give me my best odds.
Sure.
And I made a lot of rookie mistakes, and especially for autoimmune diseases. I added salt. I just, I would see, oh, so-and-so used aminos in their raw dish. They called it raw, so I guess aminos are raw. Like I would make a lot of those little jumps of instead of actually investigating the products myself. Mm-hmm. What I learned over time is most of these products are not raw, and especially for disease reversing purposes, they're really counterproductive. Right. So I had to learn to really simplify. I would say it took about 3 to 6 months. Around there is when I really started to get my groove of, okay, if I focus my food on low-fat fruits and some greens and some vegetables, then I feel my best. I have the most energy. If I keep the fat away and the salt away, I feel my absolute best. It gives me the ideal circumstances to function.
Sure. So when that's absolutely right. That is absolutely, it absolutely does. So let's so fast forward just a little bit. Were you still obese at the time when you decided to go raw? And
oh yeah.
Yeah. And then, so how long, you said 3 to 4 months later, when you started hitting your groove, is that when you started noticing the weight loss? And then also your hypothyroidism medicine. I read in your story that, or listened to you in your story that you started to have to reduce it as well. Was it about that time?
So I would say about 6 months in is when I started to reduce medication, that sort of medication. But um, I honestly can't remember exactly that timeline for that particular medication reduction. I do know that it was about a year and a half before I released that medication entirely.
Wow.
But
Still a year and a half after how long being on it?
over 10 years.
Holy smokes.
And well, the first medication to release was the blood pressure medication. Within the first month, despite my not really figuring out my fat and salt intake,
Mm-hmm.
simply eliminating the processed vegan junk food products from my diet, I was able to get off of my blood pressure medications.
Right. Right.
And then the cholesterol came down, and I mean, I don't want to say it was great cholesterol, but it was definitely under the 200 mark.
Good deal.
Yeah, and then I noticed I didn't have to do my acid reflux medication anymore. I was off of all the antidepressants. Let's see, what else was I off? Can't remember all the collection of things but I did know I noticed my weight loss started happening. I started to release inflammation. I don't want to really say that it was fat loss at the beginning.
Right.
A lot of it was water weight. A lot of it was inflammation.
Sure.
And I started dropping weight within the first 3 months. And but I feel like my overall weight loss journey took about 2 years.
Right. What was your if you don't mind me asking, what was your at your heaviest?
Well, the heaviest that I weighed myself, that I was willing to weigh myself at, I don't really know if that was my legit heaviest, was 212.
212. And how tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
5'5". That's
Yeah.
about average. Yeah, it's not too short, but
I'm about right in the middle. Either if anyone takes a picture with me, I'm either really tall or really short.
there you go.
I'm right in the middle.
There you go. My wife is 5'7", and I'm 6'2". So I mean, we're kind of a little bit of a difference there, but yeah, 5'7", 5'5". That's an average height. That's not bad. So, but still 212. I'm sure you could feel it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was rotund, and I was very uncomfortable in my skin. When I see pictures of my old self, some people will even tell me like, "Oh, you were cute then too," and I'm like, "Yeah," but when I look at myself, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking at a person who was in pain. I'm looking at a person who was miserable and who often struggled with self-esteem and even just finding a reason to live.
Right.
So I see the pain.
I've seen your before and afters as well, and there's one that really catches my eye, that really makes me it touched my heart, was you laying on your bed with you just laid out on your bed, and it was, you just looked so tired.
I was really tired. I was trying to take some before pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It was after my 30th birthday and before MS. And I was trying to take some, I had seen the pictures from my 30th birthday, and I was horrified about how bad my body had gotten and how it was spiraling out of control. So I was born in February. So between February and September, when I got to the hospital with MS, I was trying to diet.
Right.
I tried Beachbody, I tried Shakeology. I was trying some calorie restriction. I was trying eating frequently, small meals.
Sure.
I felt like I was trying everything,
mm-hmm.
and nothing was working.
And you just lay down on that bed. You look so tired.
I was really tired. I actually think we had been finished taking some progress pictures, and I was just like, I hate myself. I'm in so much pain. I'm miserable. Life sucks. Like, that was my whole thing. And my partner at the time took a picture. He's like, I'm just gonna put that there. It's fine.
Yeah. But you know what? It's sometimes you gotta hit bottom sometimes, and
that was pretty much rock bottom for me.
Yeah, you were getting close. So but your after pictures are pretty phenomenal.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
pretty phenomenal. So yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. So you're starting to notice your medication, or you're tapering off your medication. You're starting to lose weight. Um, and that, of course, you said it took what, a year and a half to 2 years
Yeah,
or something?
for the thyroid medication, it was a very slow taper. A lot of people want to be like, I'm raw now and I'm just going to up and quit all my medications.
Right.
That is like the worst possible idea because it takes time for your body to adjust, and no medication should really be just quit like that. You've got to give your body that ease in and ease out transition.
And
Um,
your endocrinologist probably was he aware of what you were doing, your diet?
Um, at that time, yes and no. I wasn't totally open at that time about everything that I was doing. It took about, I want to say 6 months for me to be really open and honest about, yeah, I've been doing this diet and it's working and I'm looking great. Because I didn't want to be like, yeah, I'm doing this diet and it's going to fix me, because I didn't know. I still legit did not know if this was going to work or not. And it's still, I mean, even 2 years later when I was doing my after pictures, I still wasn't sure if this was the answer. It's like, I see this evidence. And for me, it's like when you look in the mirror and your body's changing, it takes your brain a long time to catch up with you and with what you're actually looking like objectively. You still see the old body for a long time.
Sure. Yep.
It takes, I think, the brain the longest to really acknowledge your change. The only way I could really see my changes was if I would take those before and after pictures and stick them side by side to see my progress.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I just would see my old body. Even in like when I hit 132 pounds, I was like, I still see a lot of my old body in here.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to acknowledge. But yeah.
I know.
But a lot of times those changes, and especially with the medications, it happens so gradually, and you've got to give it time to release. And for me, I went by over medication symptoms. So as soon as I started feeling over medicated on any particular medication, I would then, start shaving a little bit down off of that pill every day. And eventually it got to a point where I couldn't handle the over medication symptoms by taking just a tiny piece of the pill. And so I was forced on my Hashimoto's medication to release that drug because I just couldn't handle it anymore.
Good for you.
Yeah, and I actually stayed medication free on that for nearly 3 years.
And what about your blood pressure medicine and your other high cholesterol medicine? Were you able to taper off that as well at the same time?
Yeah, those were super fast.
Those were super fast.
Yeah, those were within the first couple of months.
Oh wow, okay,
the
good.
Blood pressure one was within weeks, because I have a blood pressure cuff, and so I would take my blood pressure every day, and it started to be that as soon as I took the blood pressure medication, within hours my blood pressure would be crashing and it would be too low. Okay. So then I was like, okay, well, I definitely need to back off on that one.
Good. Well, good for you. I went before I went vegan, my cholesterol was over 300, and
wow.
it was 305, I think. And I went plant-based, and within the first 4 weeks, it had dropped to 147.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I have a genetic disorder. I have familial hypercholesterolemia, which is a genetic disorder where my liver creates too much cholesterol and my body does not dissipate cholesterol like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So
that's impressive.
It's very scary, and I've had some pretty bad health scares. So just switching over just to vegan, and I went pretty clean. I was pretty ugly the first couple of weeks, but after that I went pretty clean vegan just to see what would happen. And it was so funny. I had lost about 15 pounds, I guess, in the first 2 weeks. And I took a picture at my daughter's wedding. It's one of my before pictures because I was too scared to take pictures before that.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And at my highest point, I was at 295. And so at my daughter's wedding, I was at 280. And I thought I had lost weight. People had told me, gosh, you look like you've lost weight. And I thought, oh, okay, great. So I'll take a picture. Oh, it was not my best picture, but it was a good before picture. And, and I say that because you're right. It takes a while for your brain to process losing weight, because you do see yourself as that, oh gosh, you see all those imperfections, whereas other people haven't seen you in a while. So,
yeah, absolutely.
you know,
And about the cholesterol thing, one important point to note, and this kind of ties into the later part of my story. I never got my cholesterol under about the 170s, even after going raw.
really?
Yeah, until this week, and that's a later part of the story.
Oh, I know, I can't wait. Okay, so we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
So you have gotten off your medication. This is a year and a half later. You've went raw. You've been raw for a year and a half. You've lost how many pounds by then?
A year and a half, I want to say like 75, 70, 75.
Okay.
I eventually did lose about 80 pounds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I say
Okay.
about because I don't know exactly how big my biggest was, because
Sure.
I was scared away.
Sure. So a year and a half, 2 years into it, you are 140-ish. Is that right?
At 2 years, I was 132.
132. Okay. Good Lord. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Good for you.
Thank
And so you're off your medications. You're feeling
Yes.
good. You're feeling great. You're posting these awesome videos.
On top of the world at that time.
Top of the world. You're not having any MS symptoms.
None. I got all my function back, and I've got my brain and my logic centers back.
No symptoms. No medication. No medication. Oh, love it.
And even stress and lack of sleep wouldn't bring on more episodes, which was crazy.
And then March. Was it March?
And then March of 2019.
2019.
So I had, I made a goal because I had moved north of Austin. I wanted to establish with new doctors, moving cities, and I wanted to establish with a vegan medical doctor.
Yes.
And I did so in March of 2019. And originally I just went for blood work, and I had been feeling kind of off lately, and I just kind of wanted to make sure with my blood work. I figured, oh, maybe I'm low on something, and I just didn't know. I do tend to eat mostly fruits a lot of the time. So I figured maybe it's a mineral or something.
Sure.
But I want to know what specific one it is. And I was feeling fatigued. I wasn't. I've been lifting weights and working out in the gym with a trainer, and I've noticed that I haven't made a whole lot of progress, even doing it consistently. And I'm like, my diet is great. I'm consistent.
Sure.
Why am I not getting the results that I wanted?
And you have what, 4 years of proof?
Yes, absolutely. And but I want to say, like, towards the end of 2018, I started gaining some weight. I was just like, whatever, it's probably muscle. But by March of 2019, I had gained 20 pounds, and I was like, what's going on? So I established with a vegan medical doctor. I got blood work. After telling her about all my symptoms, she started asking me about my sleep and my breathing. And I was like, it's always been bad. What of it?
Yeah.
And we started to investigate this further, because based on my diet and based on my exercise and my lifestyle, there was no reason for me to be gaining weight, to be sluggish, to not make progress in the gym, to be fatigued, and having trouble sleeping. This was all very bizarre. So after investigating further, I did a CT scan, a nasal endoscopy, and sleep study, and she said, just go with me on this. I have a suspicion it's probably in your airways. And I was like, what?
Now had you gotten your results back yet on your blood test?
Oh, and yes, I did get my blood test results back. Most of everything was pretty good.
Yeah, I remember you reading them out.
Yeah, other than my thyroid was out of whack suddenly. And I mean, like, it had been fine for nearly 3 years without medications. My cholesterol was high. What?
Yeah,
I'm
what?
not eating overt fats. I'm not eating salt. How is this even possible?
Now this throws into the face of everything that you've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. There's no way in the world that your cholesterol can go up.
Yeah, and it's been working for me. So how is this even possible? And I was also experiencing high blood pressure. She said it was white coat hypertension. Like my blood pressure would spike significantly in the doctor's office, but at home I could get somewhat normal readings.
Sure.
But it really threw me, and it made me stop and question everything. Like, and people were saying, non-vegans would say, oh, well, you know, it's your vegan diet.
Sure.
And then vegans were saying, well, you know, you're just doing too extreme with the raw and the fruit-based. You need to have a more moderate vegan diet. The raw vegans were saying, oh, you just need some celery juice and happy thoughts.
Or water fast for a month or something.
And the fruitarians were like, you just need a water fast.
Right.
And resolve your childhood traumas and do some breathing exercises, deep breathing exercises, and do yoga and go to the chiropractor, things like that. They were like, oh, you just need to have more lifestyle changes. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've been doing very consistently, like 100% for 4.5 years by this time. I'm just rolling my eyes being like, I've done this, I've done that, I've tried everything, I've water fasted, nothing is budging this.
Right.
This is not right. What's going on? And come to find out, I have 3 new diagnoses. And the first one was that my sinuses and my upper airways were all kinds of deformed. The sinus cavities, there's 8 of them. They were not looking healthy, open, correct. There was inflammation, and I'm thinking, I have no inflammation in my diet. How is this even possible? Sure. My septum, this I could actually understand, was smashed like an accordion, so it was blocking my airways on both sides of my nostrils. Which I was like, I'm sure like my cat booped me at some point, and I was like, oh, you broke my nose, you know. But
right.
I do have a cat who doesn't have any feeling in his face, and he can boop really hard.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Yeah. Not exaggerating on that one.
Wow.
But
so your sinus cavities, your septum, your septum was crushed, you said?
Yeah, it was like an accordion. It's called an accordion. It's basically like zigzaggy on both sides.
Right.
And so I don't know, I didn't have any significant injuries that I was like, oh, that was definitely it when I broke my nose or whatever.
Wow.
But because I mean, I've had pain. It just happens. I'm accustomed to it. I don't have any significant memories of having my septum crushed, but I'm sure it would, you know, I don't think I was born with that. Okay. But the sinus thing, definitely genetic, definitely born with it. My airways were teeny tiny. I also learned that it's called oropharyngeal. It's the airway in the lower part of the throat. The lower airways is super tiny. I'm like half the size of a normal human. Yes,
you read the sizes, and I think it was 6 point something, and it was normally like 8 or 9 or something like. Is that right? Or
yeah, 10? It's actually 10 to 12.
10 to 12. That's right.
And mine was like 6.5 as far as the size of millimeters. And then my lower jaw from first molar to first molar, I believe was, I can't remember the exact number. I think it was like 31 something, and a normal one is 38 to 42.
Sure.
So I have a significantly more narrow jaw, and my jaw, the placement of my lower jaw is also further like back. It should be more forward. A normal jaw moves forward as you grow and develop. Apparently I didn't grow and develop the way I was supposed to.
Right.
And so it's been crushing my airway, and especially when I sleep. And after the sleep studies, I learned that I stop breathing in the middle of the night, like 20 something times an hour. And I think it was like 20 to 30 something. I can't remember the exact numbers on the study, but my micro arousals were significant. And so I was never apparently able to get into the deeper levels of sleep, and especially the restorative levels of sleep. And because I could never really sleep consistently or productively, this was causing my cortisol levels to shoot up like crazy. And so every single day, my body was chronically stressed with super high cortisol, and struggling, and that was causing high blood pressure, that was causing high cholesterol, and that was also stressing out my thyroid and causing it to go out of whack.
Wow.
Amazing. And like
Wow.
I had a few videos during this time while I was getting these tests done, getting diagnosed, and all of it was very frustrating and very confusing for me. And I felt like it was really hard to get a lot of support from anyone on the internet,
Right.
because everyone was like, you just need animal products, or you need to go raw carnivore, or you need to do celery juice or whatever it was, or magic herbs. You need to take herbs and do a master cleanse and fast for 48 days or whatever it is. And
Well, I'll be honest with you. I follow you, of course. I follow
yeah,
you on YouTube, and I was genuinely concerned. Because for one, you could have done one of two things. You could have never told anybody this,
yeah,
or
easily.
you could have just, you know, thrown it off to something else, or hidden it or whatever. You could have done a number of things, but you were very open, and you were describing, of course, your frustration with it. And
Yeah,
I was genuinely concerned. I was thinking, God, what's going on with Rebecca? So I would wait till a new video would come out, and I would think, okay, she's going to have an answer. Surely she's going to have an answer, because you normally had an answer for everything, but it just seemed like you weren't having any answers, or not the answers that you were hoping for. But then when this last video came out to describe it, it was like an
yeah.
aha.
Now it all makes sense.
Now it all makes sense.
Now it all makes sense. Like, why would a raw vegan who consistently eats low fat and no salt have all these health problems? It
Sure.
didn't make sense.
It
It
did.
didn't add up.
Mm-mm.
And I was almost relieved to find out that all of this was genetic. All of this had to do with not only how I was born, my DNA, my structural, my skeleton, my tissues, just how I was designed at birth,
Sure.
but it was exacerbated by animal products, according to my vegan medical doctor. That because I ate so many animal products, it was causing more inflammation, and
Sure.
so that the shapes and the structures were getting way out of whack. Oh, and I also got diagnosed with narcolepsy. That was part of the sleep study as well.
Wow.
And
You
and
know,
that was shocking too. And apparently I've had that all my life too, according to my symptoms as I described them to the sleep tech. She actually, when I went into the sleep lab, I had no idea they were even interested in testing me for narcolepsy. But
right.
after I told them, I answered their questionnaires, and she's like, "Have you ever had this? And have you ever had done that? And have you ever like fallen asleep while driving and all these things?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, all the time. You know, who doesn't? That's my normal." So I had no idea that all of my sleeping patterns and behaviors were not normal.
Some of us, Rebecca, don't fall asleep while we're driving,
Yeah.
unless we've been driving all night and we're just tired.
Or just like micro sleeping with out of
Right.
control at work, at your
Right.
desk. Like I remember during my 20s especially, I was always micro sleeping at my desk. Yeah, and like I would have this uncontrollable crushing fatigue, and I would not be able to hold my eyes open, and I would just like nod down for a few seconds and then nod back up, and I'd be like, okay, I think I just sort of slept.
Wow. And
But it would only have been like a minute.
and it's so funny that you're right. You were genetically predisposed to have this from the beginning. So these are the symptoms that you were having in childhood.
And that's where it goes all the way back to the childhood. When I
Wow.
was having those sleep problems, and yes, the divorce and all the family stuff did exacerbate the symptoms.
Stress.
And
Yes.
triggered. Yes, absolutely. I can't discount that. But I was definitely having these symptoms as early as I want to say, as 5 years old, as far back as I can remember, I started seeing hallucinations.
And being the fact that this is what I find fascinating. Your cholesterol was elevated here because of your lack of sleep and your cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
your hypothyroidism again. And so that hypothyroidism could have been eliminated. It could have been diagnosed as this 10 years ago.
Exactly. I wish I had met my vegan medical doctor like 15 years ago, but she could have intercepted my behavior, my patterns, my lifestyle. She could have known to test me for the airways and the sleep issues. And she says she probably could have saved me from the hypothyroidism if we had addressed the airway issues and done the lifestyle stuff at that point. And for her in particular, having the no overt fat or the very low fat diet and the no salt are very essential to all of this for my particular issues.
Mm-hmm.
And but I smile because I'm just like, how many people could save themselves so much pain and suffering if they just knew to check the airways or the structural issues? Because if you're not breathing and sleeping at night, you can't repair, you're constantly stressed, you could be doing everything 100% right, and you can still be sick. And sometimes it's beyond our control.
That's true.
And it doesn't matter how much you fast, you're never going to change your bone structure. You're never going to change your skeleton. You're never going to change the formation. And a lot of my inflammation in my sinuses had to do with the deformations. It didn't have to do with my diet at all.
Right. You know, that's funny that you say that, because somebody had described it to me, or that I had heard, where your life is like a wheel, and if you have spokes, and each spoke represents sleep, love, diet, exercise, environment, water, stress or the lack thereof. All just, everything is a spoke, and if one of those spokes are slightly bent or removed or damaged, you're out of balance.
Absolutely.
And if multiple are, I mean, my God, your body, you're going to have a wreck.
Yeah, I've been collecting diseases for 3.5 decades.
And I think you had a wreck that September the 8th.
Yeah, September 8th of 2014, MS just changed my life forever.
Said, hey, it may have been a blessing. It's just a way of saying, hey, look, stop, just stop.
Yeah. It was definitely my wake-up call. It was definitely okay, you need to get it together and figure out what's going on. And even then, I don't know if MS might never have manifested had I corrected the airways way back when. Yeah. Never been living in a constantly stressed environment in my own body because of the sleep issues. If I had been able to hit productive sleep and flush those brain chemicals every single night, just like a normal person, sure. I don't know if I never would have had that. May not.
But you said that your mother suffers from hypothyroidism as well. That is genetic. I'm sorry I didn't ask this, but is your mother still alive? Is she still?
Yes, she's alive.
Does she have the same skeletal issues? Structure?
I don't know. I think at one point many years ago, I remember that one of her doctors wanted to test her for narcolepsy, and I think she just didn't believe enough in the test, and she was like, they're just going to diagnose me with narcolepsy, just because it's going to end up being that way, and then they're going to want to medicate me, and I'm not going to take the medications. Yeah. And so to my knowledge, I don't think she's ever been tested for narcolepsy, and I know she hasn't been diagnosed with MS or any of the other issues that I've had, to my knowledge.
Is she treated for her thyroid issues?
Oh, yes, she's medicated for her thyroid.
She doesn't follow your diet, does she?
No, she still probably believes in all that protein BS that they taught her in school. And you know what? I worked on her for a good decade, and I don't think it ever stuck. I think maybe gradually over time she became a little bit more open to being plant-based, but definitely still on the protein and definitely still on the healthy fats.
But your friends and family that, I'm sure you still have friends and family who knew you as you were prior. They have to see the strides and successes that you've made. Do they give you any feedback?
A lot of people will just say, you lost weight and that's why you're better now. They just say, all you did was lose weight and then all your diseases went away. And I'm like, but that's not how it really happened. And even now with the last year of discovery with all of this other genetic and structural stuff, that definitely wasn't true, because I started gaining weight again, no matter what, with no changes to my diet.
Wow.
No matter what I did. And it was just so unexplainable. And I'm like, how can I gain 20, 30 pounds off of eating fresh, whole fruits and vegetables, the same amount that I've always been doing for years? It doesn't add up.
How many calories do you think you take in a day?
Well, when I first started on this lifestyle, I did feel kind of angsty and calorie deprived because I was still battling my withdrawal and my addictions. So
Mhm.
I would take anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 calories within, I would say, the first 6 months.
Sure.
Um, Over time, my needs have lessened. I would say I average between 1,800 and 2,300 calories nowadays.
And your macros are what? Are they 80-10-10, 70-20-10? What?
No, I'm more like 95-5. I take 90, yeah, because I don't do overt fats and I don't care about protein because protein for me is in everything.
Sure, it is.
I don't need to mega dose on any of it. As long as I'm getting, I think I went on proteinaholic.com and
Mhm.
did their calculator. I only need 30 grams of protein for my body.
Right.
In order to build muscle and weight lift, I need 35.
Exactly. There you
So
go.
I hit that without trying, just by eating fresh fruits and vegetables, approximately 1,800 to 2,300 calories of that a day. So I don't even worry about protein anymore. I'm just like, and whenever I log my food into Chronometer, I have all the amino acids hit beautifully. I'm not suffering, and in my blood work for protein, calcium, iron, all of that is just beautiful. Potassium is beautiful, sodium is beautiful. All of my other markers are just beautiful. And
Perfect.
so I have that validation now. I also did the mineral testing,
Mhm.
and I'm also very, very good in all of those, the zinc, the magnesium. It's like I have no concerns nutritionally,
Good.
as long as I'm including my daily minimum, which for being an active person and lifting weights in the gym, my minimum is 1,800. So I definitely don't want to do less than that, because
Sure.
then I'll go into a deprivation mode, and then it'll raise my cortisol again, and I'll try to just hoard everything that I eat. It's not a good situation. So I definitely have to eat enough.
It's
But I also don't calorie restrict. If I have
good.
a day where I want to eat more, I'll eat more. It's
Good.
fine.
Good. Yeah, it's so funny. People tell me when I ask them, I say, "Well, what's your caloric intake like?" And the first thing they tell me is how many grams of carbs they try to stay under.
Oh
And
gosh.
I'm thinking to myself,
Why?
why?
Yeah.
And I tell them, they said, well, you got to cut down on your carbs. And I asked them, I said, well, what about your fats? Well, no, just, they go back to the carbs. And I asked them, I said, if you had 10% body fat, what would you look like? And they said, oh, well, I would be ripped, and I'd have muscles everywhere, it'd be just, the skin would be so tight. I said, do you have that right now? Well, no. I said, well, then why do you need more than 10% fat intake?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you really think about it that way, that's about the most simplistic way that I can explain it to them, is that, you're not a bear. You're not going into hibernation. Okay.
Exactly.
We're not
We don't
storing,
even store it for winter.
we're not storing it for winter. We're not going anywhere. Okay. And right now you have excess of 10% body fat. So
Mhm.
why do you need to eat 12,
Yeah.
20, 30? It's ridiculous.
And honestly, for me, like, a lot of people can get away with the 10 as raw vegans and fruitarians. And even, some people even get away with 20 or even 25. I think that's still generally considered a low fat diet technically.
Sure.
But for my particular medical history, if I go up to 10% of fat intake every single day, I don't do well. I don't thrive. I have to avoid all overt fats. And so simply by avoiding all overt fats, overt, by the way, is like mostly. So like,
Sure.
if anyone doesn't know that, avocado, coconut meat, nuts, seeds, I tend to avoid all of those entirely. On a rare occasion, I might splurge, but it's like 1 or 2 months apart. And it's just a little bit. But
So what you're saying
the,
is if you eat olive oil, that's overt fat.
oh God, yes, that's 100% fat.
No, it does.
Awful. I
I
can't
know.
believe I used to do that.
I
Yeah,
know. You
no oil.
you
No.
mentioned that earlier, and I almost butted in and or almost brought it up that I told somebody that the other day. I said, if you take olive oil and you look at the calories, and the calorie says 150 per serving, look over to the side and it'll tell you how many calories from fat. If it's 150 calories for fat, it's 100%
It's
per serving.
100% fat. Yeah.
That's fat. So that is
And then,
definitely overt fat.
yeah, and then my neurologist after MS told me to eat coconut oil. And I tried. He's like, can you eat like 2 tablespoons of coconut oil every day? I tried that during my first month after the hospital and before going raw. I actually tried it during my raw experimentation phase, and I'd go off of it, and then I'd eat the coconut oil. I did a lot of experimenting.
Sure.
And I tried to follow my doctor's orders, and it made me feel awful.
Oh.
I can't understand people who actually try to eat oil. And then they're like, well, if you eat fat, it's good fat for your brain. And I'm like, no, you digest it and you absorb it, and it doesn't just like magically walk from your stomach to your brain and pack on. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
But yeah, like I can get 5% fat, sometimes even 6% fat just by eating fresh whole fruits and vegetables, enough of them.
Sure.
Because every single fruit and vegetable contains some fat and some protein. And it adds up at the end of the day.
I was shocked at how much protein a watermelon has.
Yeah, I know. Like if I'm on Watermelon Island, I'm still getting fat and protein.
I couldn't believe it. I can't remember the number, but it shocked me. I read it to my wife. I said, Angie, look at this. You know, I think it was a slice of watermelon had, I don't even, I think it was like 7 or 5 grams of protein or something. I mean, it was something, it wasn't really big, but it was shocking. I had no idea. I thought it was water, sugar, and some fiber.
Yeah, I mean, those little grams add up. I mean, I can make over 35 grams of protein and over 10 grams of fat simply by eating watermelon all day. I mean, it happens.
I gotta look it up. Let's see. Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. And for one serving of watermelon, it's 1.7 grams. So it's almost 2 grams of fat, almost 2 grams of protein.
And if I'm eating like 1 or 2 watermelons in a day, that's a lot of protein.
Exactly. I know I eat more than 1 serving of watermelon.
Yeah, most people would be like, that's not enough. That's
just like most people eat more than 1 serving of olive oil.
Right? Like when they find out that it's like a tablespoon and you shouldn't have, I think they recommend, don't exceed more than 1 or 2 tablespoons in a day. Mm-hmm. And you see people just pouring it over their salad, not realizing that's like 20 tablespoons right there.
Exactly. Yes, that's so funny. Well, so you've went to we'll get back to your new your 3 diagnoses.
Yes.
So you went and you had surgery on your sinus cavity.
I did. I had it's called FES, and I can't remember the acronym, like facial endoscopic sinus surgery or something like that. I'm probably wrong on the exact name of that, but it was on July 1st.
Right.
So that was last month. It's only been a month.
Only been a month.
It's only been a month since my sinus surgery, and that corrected the shape of my upper airways. It opened up everything, it corrected my accordion septum, straightened everything out. And it was all done endoscopically. So they just shoved these long tools up through my nostrils and didn't have to make any incisions on the exterior.
Wow. So, and that it was an outpatient surgery, I'm assuming?
I went into my ENT's office. Uh-huh. They got me loopy, and I was actually awake during the surgery. Right. And they said, oh, we're going to give you this cocktail of medications in order for you to forget the surgery. And I actually do remember most of the surgery. I had a playlist, and I was listening to music on my earbuds, and that's how I kept track of time.
What were you listening to?
Oh, it was a bunch of different things all together. A lot of them were very inspirational and like, go, you can do it. Yeah. And also soothing. So I was trying to stay calm and also motivated that I could definitely get through all of this. So, but I love Broadway stuff. So most of it was from Broadway shows.
So go and soothing. Let's see. I would have to choose AC/DC and the Bee Gees.
Yeah. Actually, I did have some AC/DC in there.
There you go.
I did.
There you go. So you had the sinus surgery, and then you also had to have a CPAP or a forced air machine. Is that right? To sleep with?
So now I'm a raw vegan fruitarian sleeping with a CPAP machine.
Wow. Which
is kind of awkward at first. It was kind of like, you want me to sleep with durable medical equipment? Are you serious?
Your elephant mask.
Yes. So I now sleep with a CPAP machine because I declined, but you can have a massively invasive jaw, skeleton, skull breaking surgery to reshape the lower airways. that to me was terrifying. I'm like, I'm already doing the nasal endoscopy thing. I'm not going to do massively invasive jaw breaking surgery. That just seems way too invasive. So instead, my other option is to use the CPAP machine, which forces air through my airways while I'm asleep so that I don't stop breathing. And the machine is actually pretty smart. It'll count how many arousals I have during the night. And I've now gotten the last 2 days of using it. It'll send me a report in the morning of how well I did, and it'll grade me. And like, you did this, you got an A+. I've now brought my arousals to about 1 to 2 an hour, down from like 20 to 30.
Holy smokes.
So I'm actually doing pretty good on this machine. It's been very awkward and uncomfortable getting used to it, especially after the surgery, because my nose and my septum were very tender, and I had to make sure not to put too much pressure on it while it was still healing. And it's just a little elephant mask, like it's like a little trunk. It just goes over my nose like a clown nose or something. Right. And it's just this tube that comes straight out. It's not like a full face mask or anything. But it forces air up my nose, and now I have a clean airway. My upper airways are nice and clean, so that air goes nicely through it. So I've actually made my CPAP tolerance much better because of the surgery. So I'm able to keep it on overnight, and it's very effective. I'm definitely making progress with that, but it's still very new, and I'm still absolutely healing. Like, this is all so recent.
So do you keep your blood pressure cuff close by? Have you checked your blood pressure lately? Has it
so my blood pressure has come down.
Good.
I am now having healthy blood pressure readings even in the doctor's office, because I had the white coat hypertension. I was getting like 168 something over like 110. It was something crazy like that, like it used to be back when I was obese.
Right.
So nowadays, it's actually, I think this week I've had between the 120s and the 130s over like 80 to 90. So that's
good.
Borderline high, but absolutely passable. We're definitely seeing progress here in the correct direction. And then I got my blood work done just a few days ago, and I got that back. My cholesterol is now down under 150 for the first time in my whole freaking life. And 150 is like that heart attack proof number that whole food, plant-based, no oil, elusive, like these are the ideal numbers for your cardiac risk. And I now have cholesterol under that threshold. I feel like I've earned this. I deserve it. Like, why didn't my raw vegan fruitarian lifestyle give me that for the last 5 years just by itself? Well, it was my cortisol. It was my sleep issues. It was not being able to breathe at night.
But you know what? It kept you maintained for the last 4.5 to 5 years, feeling good.
Yes.
Could you imagine what you're
Had I not changed my diet? Oh my God. I can't imagine. Like, I would be so much worse off. There have been times when I thought, especially in the last 6 months, where I thought like, oh, I don't know, I might be dying. I might be having a heart attack. But when I was dealing with the spiking of the blood pressure and everything, and I can't imagine what if I would even have survived this long with all of these genetic issues. I mean, they can be fatal.
Sure.
They like sleep apnea on its own can be fatal.
Sure. Absolutely.
And untreated. And then with narcolepsy, it's a miracle I didn't fall asleep while driving down the freeway as much as I drive in Texas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I technically have micro sleep while driving on the freeway, but it could have been so much worse.
Well, I'm in the Austin area, so you let me know. Well, you're not having the issues anymore, but
it's much better. It is manageable now. I'm not taking the narcolepsy medications. I'm managing it with a sleep hygiene schedule prescribed by my doctor, and with the CPAP now, and having the sinus surgery. I'm definitely improving my manageability of the narcolepsy.
That's exciting. That's extremely exciting.
But even still, I mean, there are some days that are hard, but I mean, I have my days, and I try not to drive on those days. Like this morning was hard, and my partner drove me instead of me driving. So now I'm learning these self-management tools to keep myself safe.
You'll get better. It'll get better. I know it will.
I know. I'm only a month out of surgery. Like, it's got to get better now.
You're a fighter, girl. You are a tough young lady.
Thank you.
You are.
I've been through a lot.
Well, I'll be excited to see the update video. I'm sure you're going to
Yes.
be one with all your findings. So
I do need to make an update video. I think the last video I posted was pre-surgery, and then I was post-surgery, so I was not in the mood.
And you went to San Diego. You went to San Diego.
Yeah. Yes, and then so the week that I started feeling better was the week before the San Diego Fruit Festival. Mm-hmm. So I had 1 week to get my presentation all typed out, and I had like 77 slides for that for PowerPoint. I was very detailed, and and so then I went to San Diego and I gave my presentation, did the panel, flew back, and now we're at this week, and I'm recovering. It's only been a few days. It was just Monday and now it's Saturday, so it's been like 5 days since I came back.
Right.
And the first few days coming back, I'll admit, were extremely hard, and I was basically useless. My narcolepsy symptoms were flaring like crazy. But the last 2 nights of sleep have been much better, and I'm getting back on track. I know it's just a matter of time, but I mean, I still battle even now, but it's so much better, and I know it's getting better and better. Just the more I recover, the more consistent I am, especially with the sleep hygiene schedule. Like I know, and then the consistency of my diet and my fitness, and I'm back in the gym lifting heavy weights. Of course, I get supervision from a professional certified trainer so that I don't hurt myself or pass out in the middle of a lift.
Absolutely.
But I know that it's like in 6 months, check with me again. I know I'm going to be like, because I felt so held back all this time. I just feel like I'm going to slingshot forward now and just do all the things I've been wanting and meaning to do. And now I'll have the energy and focus and clarity to do them. I mean, I'm excited. I want to see the results in my body of all the hard work that I put in the gym. I want to have those consistent annual blood work numbers, beautiful numbers. My glucose, my A1C, they're all just gorgeous.
Good
Fruit
deal.
doesn't cause diabetes, by the way. In fact, after going raw and going low fat, especially, was when I saw all of my hypoglycemia happening every other day to daily. All of that went away. And I don't have hypoglycemia anymore. I'm not considered pre-diabetic anymore. I'm considered perfectly healthy.
That's a paperless, what is it? A paper toothless tiger, as Dr. Esselstyn calls the heart disease. That should be a paper toothless tiger. And you know what? Diabetes is the same, especially type 2. There's no reason in the world that anybody should have type 2 diabetes. It just shouldn't.
Yeah. And it's all lifestyle, and it's reversible with changing your habits, dropping that protein addiction, dropping that addiction to all those, your concept of what healthy fat is. You don't need that much.
No, you don't.
You don't need that much. And the more fat you intake, the harder the carbs have of a time of getting through your body, processing and moving on like they're supposed to. They get trapped in the blood. They increase the blood sugar. I mean, people want to blame the fruit, but it's not the fruit's fault at all. Like, I can eat sugary fruits. I can eat dates and bananas all day long, and I will never have high blood sugar anymore. I will not spike. I will not crash. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Well, I mean, it's a pretty good design. I think it works pretty well when you get out of its way and let it do it. And if you feed it optimum fuel, it'll act at an optimum level. So you just have to do it, and fruit, that natural sugar is absolute preferred fuel source for our muscles. And if we just, like you said, if you just quit coating your muscle cells in fat and allow the insulin to unlock it to let the glucose get in, it'll do it. It'll work.
Muscles and brain.
That's right.
Glucose is the source of fuel for the brain. No matter what the neurologists want to believe, it's not coconut oil. Promise.
I'm not eating anything that solidifies at room temperature, much less I'm just not eating any oil anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But definitely I'm not going to eat something that solidifies at room temperature. I'm not doing it.
No kidding.
Coconut oil and bacon grease, the only difference is to me is, you have to slaughter an innocent animal to get one. And the other one is, equally, health-wise, they're equally the same thing, basically.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw a Nutrition Facts video that equated beef fat to coconut oil.
Sure.
as far as how toxic they are for our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I would obviously, if you're gonna eat a high fat diet, leave the animals alone. You can still get all the same stuff, vegan versions, but and the hard lesson that I had to learn was just because it's vegan does not mean it's healthy.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Girl, I tell you, you're a fireball and you're a fighter.
Well, thank you.
And I love it. I love it. I thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
I appreciate it. I do. And hopefully we'll get back up to Austin. I think we'll be leaving tomorrow, or no, Monday. We'll be leaving Monday to go back up to Austin. And but we'll be around. And I think Megan had even mentioned maybe we get together for a fruit luck or something. So
yeah, we're thinking about scheduling a fruit luck. Megan and I have an annual fruit luck for the last 3 years, and we kind of fell off because it's usually in July, and sure. I had the surgery, and then we had to go to San Diego, and Megan actually went with me to San Diego.
Right.
And so we're kind of like, well, should we do it on August? So we're thinking about doing it August, I think 24th, but I have to confirm.
Okay.
About that. But we're probably going to do it at the Whole Foods headquarters, the Whole Foods off of, I think, 5th and 6th in downtown Austin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The big one.
Yeah. So there's a nice, beautiful eating area outside with like patio furniture. And we usually like pull together a bunch of tables and chairs. And if anybody doesn't want to bring something, or if they get hungry in the middle and decide, oh, I didn't bring enough, or if they want something different, the store's right there.
Sure.
So easy to just grab whatever you want and then just come right back outside and join us. So we usually try to bring a few things and then, pile them all together, but it's nice to have the options like right there.
That's it. That is true. That is true. Well, we'll keep in touch and touch base on that, because I would definitely like to hook up with you guys and give
that's our version of eating out.
There you go. Go. Well, good deal. Again, I thank you so much, and I wish you nothing but the best, and I cannot wait to hear your update video or see your update video, and and many more to come.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, with that, I will bid you adieu, and we'll talk again.
Awesome.
All right, girl. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Hey there, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast video as much as I did enjoy putting it on. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below. There's a little bell. Just hit that little rascal. That way it gives you any kind of notification when a new video pops up. So, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it, and have a great week. And don't forget, if you're going to be a statistic, please be a good one. Good choices equal good consequences. All right? Love y'all. Peace out.